Okay, picture this. A world teetering on the edge, filled with lethal trials, ancient dragons deciding who lives or dies, and alliances that could shatter any second. You've probably felt the buzz around a certain book that throws you right into that chaos. Today, we are diving deep into Rebecca Yarros's Fourth Wing. You know, the first book in the Empyrean series that just seemed to take over everything. We'll be digging into our sources, mostly Wikipedia excerpts, to figure out what exactly happens in this world and, maybe more importantly, why it became such a massive global hit.
Exactly. Our goal here isn't just to recap the plot. It's to pull out the really key insights, the surprising bits, and give you a solid grasp on why this book caught fire the way it did. Think of it as your essential briefing on a novel that's genuinely shifted things in publishing and captured imaginations everywhere.
Right. So this book didn't just arrive quietly. It was more like a dragon landing in the middle of the bestseller list. What were the signs? How did we know this was more than just popular?
Oh, the signs were everywhere, and they
Right.
were loud. I mean, first off, TikTok. The book talk community just ran with it. You had hashtag Fourth Wing and hashtag Rebecca Yarros hitting, what, over 1 billion combined views? That's astronomical.
1 billion views.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, and it wasn't just online hype. It translated directly into massive sales. We're talking over 2.7 million copies sold in the first week alone. Then it gets translated into something like 30 languages.
Okay, that's staggering.
And it stuck around. It hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, sure, but it stayed there for 18 weeks. Plus, it picked up the International Book of the Year at the TikTok Book Awards just this year, 2024. It was a true phenomenon.
Incredible. So Fourth Wing basically rewrote the rules for a modern bestseller. And you mentioned Book Talk. It feels like this book didn't just benefit from Book Talk. It really helped push this romantasy genre forward, didn't it? That blend of romance and high fantasy.
It absolutely did. What's interesting here is it wasn't just having romance and fantasy. It was the intensity of both. You got the epic scale of the dragons, the war college, the life or death stakes, but also a really central, passionate, often pretty explicit romance.
Right.
And Book Talk was the perfect place for that. Readers found each other, they shared their excitement about this specific mix, and it created this massive word-of-mouth effect that, frankly, traditional marketing often struggles to achieve. It proved there was this huge, maybe underestimated hunger for high-stakes fantasy worlds combined with really fervent romance.
It really shows the power shift, how reader communities can now genuinely drive the market. Okay, so Book Talk helped it explode, but let's talk about the source. Where did this whole world, this idea come from for Rebecca Yarros?
Well, according to Yarros, the spark really came when her publisher was actively looking to launch a new romantic fantasy line. She actually pitched 5 different ideas, and the Empyrean, the World of Fourth Wing, was the one that landed.
5 ideas. Okay, so this one really resonated.
It did. And what makes her vision so compelling, I think, is how personal it gets. She's always loved dragons, that's one piece. Another is her connection to the military. Through her husband, you can feel that influence in the structure and discipline of Biscath War College. But the really critical piece, the one that shapes the protagonist so profoundly, is Yarros' own life. The main character, Violet Sorrengail, deals with significant physical fragility, chronic pain, weak joints, and that was directly inspired by Yarros' own experience with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, a genetic condition she and some of her children have.
Wow, that adds such a powerful layer, weaving her own chronic illness into the hero of this massive fantasy epic. What kind of message do you think that sends, especially for readers who might live with similar conditions?
It's huge. Yarros has been quite open about wanting to show people with chronic illnesses as heroes, that they can be strong, capable central figures in these incredibly demanding stories. In fantasy, we often see strength defined purely by physical power. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Fourth Wing kind of turns that on its head. It says strength is also about resilience, about finding ways to adapt and overcome when your body presents challenges. It gives Violet this vulnerability that feels incredibly real, makes her relatable, and makes her achievements feel even more hard-won. It's really quite revolutionary for the genre.
Absolutely. Okay, let's dive into that world then. Let's step into Navarre. So, the core setup. We have Violet Sorrengail, 20 years old, all set to be a quiet scribe, loving books and history. But then her mother, who happens to be General Lilith Sorrengail, basically forces her into the writer's quadrant at Basgiath War College. Become a dragon rider or die trying. Talk about a life detour.
Exactly. It immediately throws you into this world where tradition, duty, and frankly, brutal expectations dictate your path.
Yeah.
And Violet is, by her own admission and physical reality, completely unsuited for this. She has chronic pain, her joints are weak. It's the worst possible place for her.
And the danger isn't just the training itself, right? Her sister Mira warns her immediately.
Right. Mira, who's already a rider, warned her about the marked ones. These are the children of rebels whose parents were executed by Violet's own mother, General Sorrengail. They're marked with rebellion relics, forced into the quadrant, and they might, understandably, hold a grudge. Especially Zid and Rierson, the most powerful among them, whose father led the rebellion. So Violet walks in with a target on her back from day one, purely because of who her mother is.
Talk about pressure. And the entry itself is lethal, crossing the parapet, this narrow, high walkway where cadets can just fall or be pushed. She immediately clashes with this guy, Jack Barlow, who seems just purely malicious. And then there's that tense first meeting with Xaden. But she also reconnects with Dane Ados, her childhood best friend.
Yeah, and Dane's presence is initially comforting, but his signet, his magical ability, is key. He can read recent memories by touch. Seems useful, maybe even benign at first.
I sense a but coming.
Well, it becomes complicated later. But initially, Violet's just trying to survive training. Sparring is a nightmare for her physically. So she gets creative. She uses her scribe knowledge, tips from her dead brother Brennan's journal. She even poisons sparring partners to incapacitate them without permanent harm.
Whoa, okay. Desperate times.
It's controversial, but it shows her resourcefulness, her refusal to just give up. And interestingly, it's Xaden, her supposed enemy, who eventually notices her tactics and instead of crushing her, starts giving her pointers, helping her learn to fight properly. It adds this layer of complexity to their relationship right away.
Okay, so she survives training somehow. Then comes the threshing. This is the big moment where dragons choose their riders. And Violet, well, she gets a surprise.
A massive surprise. Unprecedented, really. She doesn't just bond with dragons, she bonds with Tan, this huge, powerful, notoriously grumpy black dragon. And then moments later, she also bonds with Andarna, a small golden feather-tailed dragon.
Two dragons.
Two dragons. Nobody in recorded history has bonded two dragons. It immediately marks her as unique, powerful, and probably puts an even bigger target on her back.
And these dragons aren't just for show, they come with abilities, right?
Oh, yes. Andarna, being young and golden, which is incredibly rare, has this unique ability to stop time for a few seconds. But it drains her immensely, and it's a secret they have to keep because she's too vulnerable. Taryn, meanwhile, eventually channels power through Violet, manifesting as lightning, a very powerful signet.
Lightning and time stopping. Okay.
And there's another twist to the bond. Because Taryn and Zellen's dragon, Selgail, are mated, Violet finds she can sometimes communicate telepathically with Sellet, and therefore indirectly or sometimes directly with Sellet through their dragons. It creates this forced intimacy and connection between them.
So the stakes just keep getting higher. She's got unique powers, two dragons, enemies everywhere. There are actual attempts on her life.
Definitely. Unbonded cadets try to kill her to eliminate competition. Even after bonding, the danger doesn't stop. Xaden actually takes pretty extreme measures to protect her, even executing a senior cadet who attacks her in violation of the Codex, the Rider's Code. He also assigns his foster brother, Liam, another marked one, to basically be her bodyguard.
This leads us towards the bigger picture, doesn't it? All these internal conflicts and dangers are happening against the backdrop of a larger war Navarre is supposedly fighting. But there are secrets.
Big secrets.
Yeah.
Huge ones. Violet eventually uses her powers and Darna's time-stopping and her own lightning in a desperate fight and seemingly kills Jack Barlow, one of her main antagonists. But the really earth-shattering revelation comes from Xaden.
What does he reveal?
He reveals that the war Navarre claims to be fighting at its borders isn't the real threat. He's secretly allied with griffin flyers from the neighboring kingdom of Poromil. Why? Because both Navarre and Poromil are being attacked by creatures called Venin.
Venin? I thought there were myths in the book.
Exactly. They're supposed to be dark wielders from fairy tales, creatures who drain life from the ground itself, but they're real. And Navarre's leadership knows it and is actively covering it up, sacrificing border towns and blaming Poromil to maintain control and hide the truth. This completely upends Violet's entire worldview. Her nation, her mother, they're lying.
That is a massive betrayal. And it connects back to Dane, right?
Yeah.
His memory reading power.
Tragically, yes. His father, Colonel Ados, who is deeply suspicious of Xaden and the Marked Ones, manipulates the situation. He uses Dane's signet on Violet without her consent or knowledge to read her memories and discover Xaden's plans and meeting locations.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that information leads directly to a Venin ambush at a place called Athabine. It's devastating. Liam, Aiden's foster brother who was protecting Violet, is killed in the attack. Violet herself is gravely wounded by a Venin-wielded poison dagger.
What a disaster. How does she even survive that?
That leads to the final massive twist of the book. Violet wakes up, expecting maybe to be imprisoned, or worse. But she's healed, and she's in Aratia, this legendary abandoned city. And standing there is her brother, Brennan.
Brennan, the one who died in the rebellion. The one whose journal she was
The
using.
very same. Turns out, he didn't die. He faked his death. He has a mending signet, the power to heal, even seemingly fatal wounds, and he's part of this secret resistance movement working against Navarre's leadership alongside Diastin and the others. Everything Violet thought she knew about her family, the war, her brother's death, all of it, completely wrong.
Wow, okay. That is quite the cliffhanger. So beyond Violet and Zaxxon, who are clearly central, let's quickly recap some other key players in this drama.
Sure. You got Dane Ados, the childhood friend, secondary love interest, whose memory reading power becomes unintentionally pivotal. Then there's Violet's family, General Lilith Sorengale, the imposing mother, and Mira Sorengale, the older sister who offers support.
And her friends.
Right. Her core allies within her squad include Rhiannon Matthias, who becomes her best friend, plus Sawyer Henrik and Redoc Gamblin. And on the flip side, the main antagonists trying to take her out are Jack Barlow, before his apparent death, and another cadet named Orrin Seifert. It's a packed cast.
Definitely sounds like it. Now, stepping back from the plot, let's talk impact again. The critical reception seems to have been largely positive.
Yeah, generally very positive, especially within its target audience. Publishers Weekly gave it that starred review, praising the world building, the characters, and they coined that phrase, sexy dark academia aesthetic, which seems to have stuck. It got compared favorably to other big names in fantasy and romantasy like A Court of Thorns and Roses, and libraries couldn't keep it on the shelves. It was one of the most borrowed books across the U.S. in 2023 and 2024.
And the book talk effect we discussed, it really stayed central to its reputation. Any other interesting cultural ripples?
Well, there was that interesting conversation around fan art. A lot of early art depicted Sidon as white, but the book described him as having dark skin. Rebecca Yarros actually commented on it, clarifying her authorial intent that he is a person of color. It highlighted that sometimes, even with description, reader interpretation or perhaps default assumptions can differ, especially in a very visual online community.
That is interesting. And were there any criticisms?
The main point often raised, like in the School Library Journal Review, was about the content, the modern language, the profanity, and the explicit sexual scenes. They noted it makes the book better suited for older teens or new adult readers rather than younger YA audiences. But even then, the verdict was still positive for fans of the romantasy genre. It knew its audience and delivered what they were looking for.
Makes sense. So for readers who devoured Fourth Wing and are eager for more, what's next for the Empyrean series?
Good news on that front. The sequel, Iron Flame, came out pretty quickly, November 7th, 2023. And the third book, Onyx Storm, is already announced and slated for release on January 21st, 2025. So the story definitely continues.
And it's not just books, right? There's talk of adaptations.
Yes, Amazon MGM Studios is developing a TV series based on the Empyrean. Rebecca Yarros herself is involved as an executive producer, alongside Liz Pelletier from her publishing house, Entangled. Plus, they're doing graphic novel adaptations of the first 3 books, with Yarros again involved in adapting the text with a comic creative team. So Navarre is definitely aiming for screens and panels too.
Lots to look forward to then. Okay, so wrapping this up, we've journeyed through Fourth Wing's explosive success, met its complex characters like Violet and Esden, untangled some major plot twists, and even touched on the author's personal connection to the story. Hopefully, this deep dive gives you a really solid sense of why this book resonated so much and what makes it tick.
And maybe just one final thought to leave you with. Considering everything we learn about Navarre, the hidden truths about the Venin, the manipulation by leadership, the complex loyalties, what does Fourth Wing really say about information control? About how easily reality can be shaped, even in a fantasy world with dragons? What does it take for the characters, and maybe for us too, to figure out what's true when the official story seems designed to deceive, even when facing seemingly impossible threats?
That's a great question to ponder. Definitely food for thought. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive, and maybe it inspires you to pick up Fourth Wing if you haven't, or perhaps explore some other great romantasy reads out there.